Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahakodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha, verse 17. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. What does that sound like? A state of martial law. And with this Candyman 1-9 situation, as I'll be referring to it as in this video that we've been dealing with over the past couple of years, we've seen a limited state of medical martial law with these lockdowns and mandates. When these lockdowns first started, a man desired to go into certain parts of the city, but was not able to due to health concerns. People were only allowed to leave their houses for reasons such as work, shopping for essential items, medical reasons, or working out. And in some places, people were only allowed to leave their houses in a certain radius. And then in some of the more extreme examples, such as in China, people were being locked into their houses involuntarily. And over in Australia, people were getting arrested for talking bad about the Australian government's handling of the Candyman situation online. And also they had drones observing people that were breaking the lockdowns so they could report it to the authorities. And in this video, I'll be reading from a few articles showing that these lockdowns and mandates are coming back in force in the countries in Europe. And in a lot of cases, it's dealing with those that haven't gotten the borderland for the Candyman. And expect these mandates and lockdown measures to become much more draconian as we get closer and closer to the second coming of Yahawashi HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ. Because as it says in Revelation chapter 12, verse 12, that devil or deceiver, Esau Edom, the so-called white man, more specifically the elites of the Edomites, such as the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, Gettys, Merovingians, you name it, are about to come down in great wrath because they know it that they have but a short time to establish their NW0, the GREATRESET, that fourth industrial revolution. So they're about to pull out all the stops to accomplish this so-called great work of theirs. And don't be surprised if you start seeing lockdowns for not only the Candyman 1-9, but lockdowns to combat so-called climate change, pollution, you name it. Over in India, they just instituted a new lockdown to clamp down on pollution. And I read an article dealing with a person in Australia that was diagnosed as dying from climate change. We're coming into some very intense times, Akim. So like we always tell you, now more than ever, you should have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure and have that protective hedge of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashi over you for when this devil comes down in great wrath. But the first article I'll be going to is on ZeroHedge.com, and the title reads, Germany preparing to impose Austria-style lockdown. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able on the unborderlined. Germany is preparing to follow the example of Austria by imposing new lockdown measures that will exclusively apply to the borderland, creating a two-tiered society to where those that have been borderland are going to look at those that haven't been borderland suspiciously, looking at them as the problem in society, holding back things from going back to normal. So they want the government to do things to them and issue draconian measures towards them to get them in line and punish them for not wanting to go along with society to get things back to normal. Labeling them so-called conspiracy theorists, enemies of the state, domestic terrorists, etc., etc. As we highlighted yesterday, Austrian authorities are enforcing new measures by having police patrol supermarkets and highways, stopping people and checking their borderland status. Similar scenes could now be about to unfold in neighboring Germany. The Guardian reports that the Candyman situation in the country is worse now than it was before the borderland was introduced. On Tuesday, the country's disease control agency, the Robert Koch Institute, recorded a 7-day incidence rate of 312 cases per 100,000 people, with several areas at more than 1,000. A year ago, before the borderland was introduced, the rate stood at 139, reports the newspaper. So that's interesting and something to think about, that since the borderland was introduced, you've seen an uptick in Candyman diagnoses. Look up something called breakthrough cases dealing with the borderland. Hey, everything that's going on right now is all by design. Like I said, these elites are about to come down in great wrath because they know that they have but a short time to establish their NW0. It's pretty much getting to a situation to where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you get the borderland, you could still get the Candyman. And if you don't get the borderland, well, hey, the government's going to come after you and institute penalties on you for not going along with the mandates and the dictates of the government. While not as stringent as the measures imposed on unborderland Austrians, several states are now moving to exclude the unborderland from numerous venues. The state of Saxony, where 85% of ICU beds are occupied by Candyman patients, became the latest to introduce so-called 2G rules in all non-essential shops and facilities, meaning only people who can prove that they have been borderland or have recovered from Candyman will be allowed to enter entry. Saxony's social minister, Petra Koping, said that in addition, tests would be required if the incidents continued to rise to the extent that hospitals were unable to cope. 2G is a reference to the German words for borderland and recovered, geimpft and genessen. North Rhine-Westphalia is due to follow suit, with unborderland people to be excluded from entry to all non-essential facilities and events, including football matches and Christmas markets. People wanting to attend carnival events as the season kicks off will be required to take a test in addition to being borderland or having recovered. And as we get closer and closer to Yahweh's second coming, do not be surprised when those that haven't been borderland won't even be allowed to go to essential facilities or places for their needs. They're just going to be completely locked out of society. Berlin is also on track to introduce similar 2G plus rules. Its mayor, Michael Mueller, said on Tuesday. The city hopes to reopen borderland centers, which were closed across the country at the end of the summer when they were deemed no longer necessary, but authorities have said this would happen in January or February at the earliest. New measures that solely impact the unborderland will be imposed despite a choir concert earlier this month in Germany, with only the fully borderland were allowed to attend in a substantial Candyman outbreak that infected at least 24 people. Meanwhile, an opinion poll in the UK found that a majority of Brits also want to impose a lockdown on the unborderland. From Matt Goodwin's Twitter, 58% of Brits would support an Austria-style lockdown for the unborderland, rising to 63% among conservatives and 72% for pensioners. And here's an image of this infographic. So like I just said, hey, people are getting conditioned to look at society as a two-tiered society. to where those that have the borderland are going to look suspiciously at those that don't have the borderland and want penalties to be enacted on them for not wanting to participate in the government's mandates and dictates. They see them as the problem holding back society from going back to normal. Now I'm going to go to my second article, also on ZeroHedge.com, titled Italian Governors Call for Unborderland to be Put Under Lockdown. 5 Italian governors have called for lockdown measures to be imposed on the unborderland, following the example of Austria, while the Czech Republic and Slovakia are also moving to enforce similar measures. As we previously highlighted, after Austria placed the unjabbed under lockdown, preventing them from leaving their homes for anything other than essential reasons. And again, for now, police were seen patrolling supermarkets and highways, checking residents' borderland status. Several states in Germany also announced that they would ban the unborderland from numerous venues. Now, Italy's unborderland population, which stands at around 7 million, could be about to face the same form of medical apartheid. Eventual new lockdowns should not have to be suffered by those who are unborderland. Restrictions should only apply to those who are not immunized, said Massimiliano Federica, the governor of the Friuli Venezia Giulia in the northeast of the country. The Telegraph reports that his stance is supported by the governors of Tuscany, Calabria, Liguria, and Piedmont. Former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi echoed the demand, tweeting, "You're not borderland? Then stay at home. A man shall desire to go into a city, but shall not be able." Outgoing Czech Republic Prime Minister Andrej Babiš has also announced that the unborderland will be banned from shops and restaurants, with the option to provide a negative test removed, despite the fact that the borderland can still transmit the virus. And like I said with my previous video dealing with Austria's lockdown on those that haven't been borderland, they're going to remove that negative test option, and it's only going to be people that can show proof that they have been definitely borderland that will be allowed to interact in society. And like I said, all this is just a stepping stone towards the eventual implementation of the MOB, the Charagma, that MICROCHIPIMPLANT. They're psychologically and subconsciously preparing you people to eventually take it. With the Candyman and the borderland, you people will be so broken down from being heavily restricted in society for not getting the borderland to where when they implement the MOB and the restrictions for that are going to be much more draconian, you'll be much more open to accepting it so you can just get back to normal. Well, hey, there is no going back to normal. What you're seeing right now is the new normal of the NW0, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The death toll is rising. The situation is serious. Borderland is the only solution. There is no other, said Babiš. Meanwhile, Slovakia will vote tomorrow on banning the unborderland from non-essential shops, hotels, big public gatherings, gyms, and swimming pools. As we reported earlier, despite the entirety of its adult population being borderland, Gibraltar is also urging people not to attend gatherings and has canceled its official Christmas events. And as we'll see in my next article, Slovakia has already come to their decision on the matter. And this is an article from RT.com titled, "Another European Country Imposes Candyman Lockdown for Unborderland." Slovakia has become the latest European country to implement lockdown restrictions on people who haven't had the Candyman borderland, as it seeks to prevent a resurgence in infections and hospital admissions over the winter. But hey, As we read about in those previous articles, even people that have gotten the borderland are still having breakthrough cases with the Candyman. It's a no-win situation. As we go forward, you're going to need more boosters, and there are going to be more lockdowns and mandates to stop the spread of the Candyman, which is going to lead to more draconian measures and these different governments around the world further locking the people down and restricting their movements in society. And best believe that these different governments and heads of state in these countries at the top rub shoulders with the elites, and they're on board with their NW0 agenda. Slovakian Prime Minister Eduard Heger announced the new measures in a press conference on Thursday, declaring a lockdown for the unborderland after the country reported a record number of new cases. The new restrictions in Slovakia, which come into effect on Monday, will require people to have been borderland or have recovered from Candyman in the past 6 months to enter restaurants, non-essential shops, or public events. In the past few days, the European nation has seen record numbers of new infections, including over 8,000 on Tuesday, with hospitals running out of space to treat Candyman patients. Slovakia has one of the lowest rates of borderland in the European Union, with over 50% of individuals still not borderland. The country of around 5.5 million has so far only inoculated 2.5 million people against the Candyman. Earlier this week, Austria became the first nation to impose restrictions on unborderland individuals as it sought to limit pressure on hospitals and emergency care units. The move came into effect at midnight on Monday for anyone aged 12 and older who has not received their Candyman borderland or recently recovered from the situation. The German state of Bavaria and the Czech Republic followed Austria in restricting access for unborderland individuals. Only people who can show proof of borderland or that they have recently recovered from the Candyman will be allowed to enter public spaces such as restaurants and shops. And like I just said, it won't matter whether people have been borderland or not. The only thing you can expect is more boosters, lockdowns, and mandates, because as we've been reading about in these articles, and like I talked about in my last video, Austria imposed a lockdown on only the unborderland. But as we'll see in my next article from RT.com, everybody's about to get that hammer dropped on them again. Austria imposes compulsory borderland from February 1st and nationwide lockdown starting Monday. Austria will introduce a full lockdown that could last for 3 weeks on Monday in an attempt to tackle a new wave of Candyman infections. The government has also ordered the entire population to get borderland from February 1st. On Friday, Conservative Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg told a news conference that a complete lockdown of the nation would begin on Monday and last for an initial 10 days. He stated that the restrictions could be extended if infection rates did not start to fall, but he insisted the lockdown would not exceed 20 days. The measures concern the entire Austrian population, not just the unborderland, but the borderland as well. The government has already imposed a partial lockdown on the unborderland in an effort to reduce hospitalization rates amid a surge in Candyman cases. When the full lockdown ends, restrictions will remain in place for the unborderland. Schallenberg's announcement came after a meeting of 9 state governors, 2 of whom had already vowed to introduce full lockdowns in their region on Monday in the western province of Tyrol. The chancellor also announced that borderlands would be mandatory from February 1st. We haven't been able to convince enough people to borderland. For too long, I and others have assumed that you can convince people to get borderland, he added, giving his rationale for the mandate. Hey, The chancellor also announced that Borderlands would be mandatory from February 1st. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 to 17, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive an mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, get a job, travel abroad, or do anything save he that has the mark, like I just said. Everything that's happening now, dealing with the Candyman and the Borderland, is setting the groundwork for the eventual mandatory implementation of the MOB. Today, you won't be able to go to certain places, travel abroad, or get a job unless you've been Borderland. And tomorrow, you won't be able to travel to certain places, get a job, or move about in society unless you've got the Charagma. Schellenberg said he lamented the political forces, radical opposition, and so-called fake news fighting against the Borderland. Austria has one of the lowest Borderland rates in Western Europe, with only 65% inoculated against the deadly virus, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. Infection rates are almost among the highest in the continent. The 7-day incident rate stands at 971.5 per 100,000 people. Now I'm going to go to my last article, also on RT.com. Another EU state to ban on Borderland from indoor spaces. Greece will soon prohibit Borderland residents from entering a litany of public spaces, the country's prime minister has announced, claiming its current Candyman outbreak is largely fueled by those who haven't received the Borderland. Starting next week, the Unborderland will be barred from entry to restaurants, cafes, theaters, bars, gyms, and museums, among other indoor public places, that they may neither buy nor sell or do anything in society save he that has the Borderland today and the MARK, the Charagma, tomorrow. PM Kyriakos Mitsotakis said on Thursday, noting that a negative Candyman test will no longer be accepted as an alternative to proof of Borderland. They're going to rule out those, or they're going to phase out those negative Borderland tests. You're just going to have the Borderland outright and show that you have proof of the Borderland. And like I said in my previous video, not only are they going to rule out the negative Borderland tests, but they're going to phase out the paper Borderland cards, and it's going to move to QR codes on your phone to show that you've got the Borderland. And they're going to eventually phase that out as well. And what do you think is going to be the next step? That MOTB, that Charagma. This is indeed a situation of the Unborderland, he said as he announced the move in a televised address, adding Greece is mourning unnecessary losses because it simply does not have the Borderland rates of other European countries. The new rules are set to take effect on Monday and will require Greeks to present Borderland certificates to businesses and other indoor establishments, places where you buy or sell, to be allowed inside. Those attending religious services mark a rare exception, however, as they will only be asked to present a negative test in order to enter a church or other places of worship. In a bid to encourage booster Borderlands among the elderly, a population much more vulnerable to Candyman, citizens over the age of 60 will be made to renew their certificate after a period of 7 months. While officials had hoped to hit a full Borderland figure of 70% for Greece's population of 11 million by autumn, the number currently stands at about 62%, according to Reuters. As its weekly case counts continue to soar to record highs, the country reported 7,317 new Candyman infections and 63 deaths on Thursday, bringing the total to more than 860,000 cases and some 17,000 fatalities since the situation kicked off in late 2019. And that's pretty much saying the same thing. But hey, as you sincere Akim can see from these different articles, hey, that devil is ramping up again and continuing to come down in great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time to enact his NW0, that GREATRESET. And while these articles all dealt with countries in Europe, best believe that it's coming to the United States of America as well. What did we see during the first lockdowns and mandates? Things started off in these other countries before coming to the United States of America. And just because the Court of Appeals had blocked Biden's mandate on businesses with over 100 employees having to force their workforce to get borderland or else face penalties, that doesn't mean anything. There's something else working behind the scenes to further bring about these draconian measures and mandates and lockdowns. And also, with that partial lunar eclipse happening the other day, which was the longest partial lunar eclipse since 1440, which we know how significant that number 144 is. And we also know that these signs in the heavens are indicators to let us know that the Most High is about to do something big. We know that it's about to ramp up out here, and prophecy is about to increase. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.